It's time for an upgrade. Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? And welcome back to the channel. As you saw from that intro, it is upgrade time for the gauges. I've been kind of contemplating going back and forth for a while now, trying to decide what I wanted to do for gauges. And initially, I didn't want to do gauges. I wanted to do something like a Smarty Touch or a CTS2. I didn't really want to do gauges because I didn't want to put pillar gauges within that truck. I have those in my second gen, and everybody and their brother's doing them. There's nothing wrong with them. I just wanted a different look and something different. And I just happened to be running across or looking on the internet and looking at some different things. And I saw a dash gauge pod for the 03 to 05, I believe, third gens. And at that point in time, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to go with Smarty, but I just didn't want to spend the money for the Smarty Touch. So I'm looking at like the S06 is what I'm looking at for this truck. But I mean, getting back to the gauges. Like I said, I just didn't know, and then I found this. This is from Banks, and this will actually fit just below the heater position in the truck. This will have these gauges sit right here like this, just below the heater controls, and they just kind of blend right in with the dash. So I thought that was a really, really cool look. That will really keep that A-pillar clean and keep visibility where it should be. I mean, if I would put them on the pillar, you lose that grab bar up there too. So, and for gauges, ISSPRO was gracious enough to send me out a set of gauges for the truck. I decided to go with their EV2 in white face to match the dash cluster. And something, if you guys did not know, they have re-released in the EV2 the mechanical gauges. So the turbo boost, the boost gauge is actually going to be an actual mechanical gauge, and then we've got the pyro gauge, the pyrometer. It'll be probed into, this is a pre-turbo gauge, so this will go into the manifold. What is in the truck now is a post-turbo gauge, and that's going to be gone. Right now I'm going to leave the probe in there and leave that as a plug because I'm not certain yet where I want to go with exhaust. For right now, it's got a straight 4-inch exhaust on it, so we're just going to leave that on there because it still has the factory turbo on there too, and I'm not certain what I'm doing with that yet. And for fuel pressure, it is going to be a electronic sanding unit. It is not going to be a live gauge. All of these gauges, this is a mechanical gauge, this is a sending unit gauge, and then this is also a pyrometer. This is a sending unit gauge also. Which, you know, all of the pyrometers will have a probe in your exhaust, either pre or post turbo. If I wanted to, I could have got the EV2 in a live gauge also, so that would actually be a small line just like that right there into the cab going up to the back of the gauge, just like normal. What makes this setup nice is AirDog actually puts a port in to their pump, so you do not have to tie into or tee into your fuel line underneath the hood or someplace thereafter, or someplace to put that tee in there. This port right here from AirDog is for your sending unit, so we'll just take this Allen plug out and this sending unit go right in its place, and then we'll plug into it. We'll put the wiring harness right in the loom with the AirDog, and everything will be nice and clean. First of all, when we get started, we got to get this center dash cluster out. So there's one screw right over there by your trash hanger, and then this has got to pull down right here, just like that. You don't need to take screws out of the bottom right there on both sides. All you need to be able to do is pull this out just like that. So I'm gonna take that screw out and get this in there so we can work on it. All right, like I said, there's one Phillips screw right here, and the rest of it just pulls out with some clips on it. Just be careful. After all, this is a dash gate or a Dodge plastic, and we know how that stuff is. While I do have this out, I'm going to go ahead and move my airbag controls into this little compartment right here. And to get that out is actually 2 screws right here, and then this piece here will come out. So, because I'm gonna have to drill a couple holes back in here to be able to run my air lines through. All right, installing this, Once you get this out, there's 4 screws to take this compartment out. And then you need to decide where you want your gauges in there, which one you want where. And then Banks actually gives you adapters to be able to go into the back of the threaded part to keep those in place. Your center gauge will actually snap right inside there. ISSPRO gives you 10 foot of wiring, so no matter where you put it, there should be plenty. I'm going to put my boost gauge on the far passenger side, followed by my fuel pressure. And then the pyrometer closest to me on the driver's side. This in the dash here, you'll need one of ISSPRO's installation kits. These are a machine thread on one side and a coarse thread on the other. And this thread's right in the back of there. It doesn't take much to put those in place. I'm just using a socket. Alright, once it's all assembled, that's what it's going to look like inside the truck. I really like that, the look of it. I did take one of the old holders out of the this old one right here, the way that's held inside there, and put it in this center gauge just for a little added security. Like I said before, this is all held in with these 2 clips provided from Banks on the dash pod for the ISSPRO gauges. Now, one thing ISSPRO does, they provide you with 10 foot of wire. You have your hot wire, your key ignition on, your dimmer wire, and a ground. I'm not going to run all 3 of these over there. I'm just going to run 1 ground, 1 dimmer wire, and 1 keyed ignition wire. And I'll make a wiring harness that goes from 3 of them into 1, going over to each source that I need. And then you'll have your different places that you need to go. Like I said, the boost gauge is a mechanical gauge, so this will just go right there to the engine compartment to the intake elbow itself. And then I'll only need 1 of these fuse blocks in place then for a keyed ignition source. Alright, right now I'm going to start building my power wiring harness. Like I said, one for, you got your dimmer, your keyed ignition, and your ground. So I'm gonna start making those right there. I already have my light source, my dimmer and ground wire cut for the boost gauge. I'm gonna make each one about 7 inches long, and then with 1 lead going to that said power source. Alright, just as I was getting ready to start building the wiring harness I need for the dimmer, the ground, and the key, the ignition, my battery had dead. All 3 batteries were dead on my camera. I did not know it, so it is the next day, hence the change in sweatshirt. So I wanted to run through and show you kind of what I do. Anytime I am doing a connection, I try my best. Inside the cab is not as a big deal, but outside the cab, anything I do, I try and solder all my connections and heat shrink them with dielectric grease. This is the harness here that I made for the 3 gauges. You can see I have it all taped together now. I went ahead and completed it. You know, I'm going to show you with these 2 pieces of wire here on just a standard butt connection how I solder those. I went ahead and took my light for the compressor gauge 2 and put it in with that harness. That way this light, because before this was just coming on with a keyed power source, so that light doesn't need to be on all the time. So I went ahead and put that in a scenario 2, because I am, like I showed you before, that's getting moved down to there and bolted into this little pocket. And I've got some holes drilled for the air lines, and then that's where the wires will come in to top for the light source. Then one of the other things that I have done is I went ahead and put in the sending unit for the fuel pressure gauge, and like I said, that goes right here into the air dog along with the snubber valve. This snubber valve has an orifice in it, kind of like a carburetor jet, and what that does is that allows, like if there's any spikes in the pump, it saves, basically it saves your sending unit from getting that burst of fuel into it. It allows so much fuel to be to go up against the sending unit for it to go to the gauge itself. And then I went ahead and ran the wires inside of some 1/4-inch loom, and then everything got tied into the air dog loom into this 1/2 inch, and I have that ran all the way through up into the engine compartment. And then I did run it, bring it out inside the original air dog loom with some 1/4 inch right there, and then that goes into the cab. So now what I have left to do is build like another wire loom here for my EGT probe. That's a blue wire. I really don't want that to be that blue wire showing, so I've got more wire loom. I've got 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. I always keep it on hand just for this kind of stuff. So I'll run this inside that. The 1/4 inch will go from down there at the plug up and around just about to this point here where the pump harness is for the air dog, and then it'll go into 1/2 inch. I'll take this out. It'll all look good when I'm done. That way you don't see any wires hanging out there like this right here. This is for the compressor, and I don't know, I don't like the look. They've got three splices in there for some reason. I have no idea why. Why not just take this off and run this right there? You can see how they have, I don't know, the way it never ceases to amaze me the way, you know, things are done when you buy a used vehicle like that. I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to go through, I'm going to show you how I did a standard butt connection, because I did have to do those underneath the truck. Those wires weren't long enough coming from the sending unit, so I had to lengthen those. I went and bought some spools of wire, same size, and then everything is inside the truck right there. I need to cut them off, and then everything will get ran in a loom up to there. For dimmer, for right now, this is the dimmer wire, or the light source wire for your heater controls, and it also runs to your dimmer. I'm gonna splice into that wire right there for that, instead of running clear over here to the dimmer switch. We're just gonna splice into this wire right here, because that's the dimmer, or the light for the light controls, or the light source or power source, whatever you want to call it, for the light controls within your heater controls. There, we got that. So other than that, that's about as far as I've made it. You will need, when I get to the pyro, I'll show you that, the pyro probe, because you're going to need to drill a hole in your manifold, and 21/64 is the hole, and you're going to need an 1/8 by 27 pipe tap. So you're going to want to pick up one of those if you don't have one, and you need a 21/64 bit. All right, this is just going to be a standard butt connection. I do use a lead-free tinning pit flux. I cut enough off, and then I twist them together. And then it's about halfway on each one. And for me, that's just a standard butt connection. See how I bent those over? Put them in your holder. They'll start heating up. Once you start hearing that flux sizzle a little bit, you know it's pretty much just about hot enough. And then that's what my soldered joint looks like. And then while it's outside, or since it's going to be outside, any of them really, I do this. I take some of my dielectric grease, and that gets gobbed all over there. And then you always want to make sure and have your heat shrink on before you solder those together. In this case, I can just slide it over the end. And then I just heat shrink that. Normally I use a torch, but I got it out of my toolbox and it was broke. So somebody else must have used it. But anyway, that's a standard butt connection for me. A nice secure connection. Dielectric grease is on the inside to protect against the weather and the elements. And for solder, I use a 4060 rosin core. All right, next I think I'm gonna go ahead and drill my hole for my pyro probe, the pyrometer probe. I already have it center punched. You can see right down here, in this area here is where I'm gonna put the probe. Now there's a couple different locations you can put the probes on these 3rd gens. On the 2nd gen manifold, everything comes out in between a 3 and 4. On these, you don't have the luxury of that. So I like to put them just like in the 3rd gen or in the 2nd gens, put them right there in the collector. I saw guys put them here, I saw guys put them there, but I'm going to put mine right there in the collector as it goes into the turbine housing. So I'm going to get set up and drill that. I'm going to start off with a 3/16 bit and then step up from there. All right, I'm up to my 21/64, and as you saw, after each step up I made, I plugged the hole and I blew everything off around it. Next, you need your tap. Just start it in there as square as you can by hand. And this cast is pretty soft stuff. It threads pretty easy. You can't really get a handle down in there, so I just use a 3/8 ratchet with a 3/8 socket on it, and it's a 12-point socket. You'll go in a few threads and then back it off. Run that in just about all the way to the shoulder, because this is tapered, so the further you go, the more you'll take the taper out of it. So just go in just about to the shoulder. And what I mean by shoulder is this right here. And next, what you're going to want to do is put a good helping of anti-seize in there. That way, if you ever want to take it out of this manifold, if you get an aftermarket manifold, because most aftermarket manifolds are already drilled and tapped for a pyro and drive pressure. You don't want to go super tight because you can break that off. Your probe and put it in and tighten it up. Your collar up. All right, now with that done, I'm going to go through and run the rest of my wires and run my boost tube. If you remember right, this is one of their new EV2 mechanical gauges. so it actually will be live from the intake elbow. There's a couple of different ways you can run those. They have a boost nut is what they call it. I actually think I have one back there. I can grab it and show it to you. But if you have an aftermarket intake elbow, they have all these ports in the back for whatever you so choose, whether it be nitrous, what have you, or what I'm going to use it for is a boost gauge. Another thing you can do is on your factory one, you can actually drill and tap this just like I did the manifold and put this fitting right in there. So right now I'm going to go through and run all my route and run all my wires in loom, run the boost tube up in loom and get everything situated inside the cab, and then start hooking things up to the back of the gauges. These gauges, the boost gauge is pretty easy. It's just the tube and a 2-lead connection. The rest of these have a plug that go in there, and then they're in the directions that shows you where each individual wire goes in said plug. So first off, you'll have your keyed ignition, your dimmer, and a ground, and then on this is the pyrometer. So then you'll have your sensor plus and your sensor negative, which is a yellow and a red, and then these are all numbered to tell you where they go within this plug. You don't know if you can see these numbers or not, but right underneath my thumbnail is where the numbers are, starting with 1 going to 6. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all my wires ran, get the wiring harness built the way that I want it, and go from there. I have all my wires ran, all the wiring harnesses built the way that I want them. You can see that I started here with the pyrometer, come out and went into some 1/4 inch loom, brought it that 1/4 inch clear over to right here, picked up this piece of 1/4 inch from the air dog. I also have my boost tube running in there, then went into some 1/2 inch, and then brought that 1/4 inch back out for the air dog's power supply, and then everything goes down through the 1/2 inch and then down through the firewall, down just below that factory plug right there. And then I ran the power wire or the ignition wire up into the fuse box. Like I said I was going to do, I did pick up the dimmer right here. My wire strippers, you can actually take and spread that coating apart, and then I was able to solder that connection together there. Then I'll just put some tape on that and that'll be good enough. Right now we are at the point to where we need to start putting all these wires in their plugs and press them in there. So we're going to get ready and do that, and then get ready and put that cluster back in. I do have my airlines all rerouted, and then that mounted too. That's back in there. So now it's just the fact of putting all these wires in the place that they go. All right, I have one of these plugs done. This is for the pyrometer, and now I'm going to go ahead and do the fuel pressure gauge. What the direction says is this right here. This is your drive tool to drive these into all these spades. It pushes that wire down in there and it slices that, kind of like, I guess, a Scotch lock in a way, you could say. You push this in there and that pushes the wires down inside there with these little fingers. So you load your wires in here, starting with 6 on this bar here. So we start off with our, this slot right here would be pin 1. And with all your wires loaded into this tool, you find number 6 on your plug, and that's what represents this side over here. And you just take a pair of pliers and start squeezing. You pull this insulation tool off. All the wires are pushed down in there. And you take and you slide this little cap on. Trim off the excess wire. Just like that. Alright, with them plugs made, I'll just reinsert my dash and get everything taken care of. It does show you in the directions that where your orientation for pin 6 is on where to plug it in at. So you want to make sure and plug that in the right way. Alright, put the key in the ignition, we'll check everything out. Then with the fuel pressure gauge, lights, running just about 16 pounds of fuel pressure. And the barometer's climbing just ever so slowly. Right now we're not going to build any boost because we're just not traveling down the road, but all in all I think it looks pretty damn good. Everything matches the gauges up there. Alright, one thing I did not do is the pyrometer and the fuel pressure gauge both have warning lights, whether you're going above or whether it's low. I did not set those just because of the fact of it requires a Windows-based computer. Our whole house is Mac-based, and I don't have Windows downloaded on the any of my machines. We all have our own laptops and that we work with, so I don't have Windows downloaded on mine nor at the other two, so I was not able to set those warning lights. So you do have the option from ISSPRO to order that kit to be able to set warning lights, and those will go off down in these bottom corners right here. So all in all, I love the look. It's a very nice clean installation, from wiring to you know, no pillar gauges, which I did not want to do. Everything is in dash and looks just phenomenal. I'm very, very pleased and happy with the way everything turned out. So I think we're going to call it an evening. I do appreciate you guys watching very much. If you don't mind, hit that like button, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you have not already done so. And we'll talk to you guys later on. Bye-bye.